Hi, everyone. My guest today is Kimberly Braun. She is a mystic adventurer, a spiritual director, author of 3 books, and someone who has been walking alongside others on their path of awakening for more than 25 years. So, her unitive experiences began with these heart opening, Rumi like experiences of divine love when she was 5 years old. And they've taken her through a decade of life as a Carmelite monastic nun, a master's in theology, Reiki attunement, and the creation of a rich body of work that spans books, recordings, retreats, online communities. But what struck me most in our conversation, beyond the beautiful territory, we covered a lot of ground. We talked about her heart openings, her path as a mystic, what it was like being a nun, what it was like returning to the world. But beyond that, what really struck me is her story of what it means to be a woman who is genuinely creating this new paradigm of being a mystic, being a spiritual teacher in a world where spiritual teachers are traditionally and overwhelmingly still men, in a world where spiritual teachers and mystics are, well, not mystics, but spiritual teachers are operating from a top down paradigm of this is how it is, theology, rather than a more feminine paradigm of from the bottom up, our lived experiences, our heart experiences. So she's really a pioneer in this space. Um, and she's moved from the territory of the monastery to the territory of solopreneurship. And this is an experience I think we share and really is something we name towards the end of the conversation, but it's something that's there throughout. This question of how as women with spiritual insight, with a spiritual nature, how we can be in this space and in this world in an authentic, heart-centered, feminine way of service, what that looks like. And her path of what that looks like is so incredibly not just interesting and profound, but relatable in a way and really incredible. So I am so excited for you all to hear this conversation with Kimberly Braun. So welcome, Kimberly, to the Shattering Place podcast.
It's great to be with you, Michelle. Mhm.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation because as I wrote to you, I read your books, Love Calls and Miracles in the Naked Light. So this is obviously just to share with my audience 2 books that share the story. So they're memoirs, I guess you could say, of Kimberly's journey from childhood through her 10 years of being a Carmelite nun. And I was riveted. I was absolutely riveted by these books. I was so drawn in to this beautiful story of intimacy, I want to say, intimacy with the divine and intimacy with silence. And I've watched your TED talk on silence. Silence is something that's very dear to me. With 3 children and 3 stepchildren, it's not something I get often enough, but it's such a profound experience for me and one I long for. But what really, I think, got me in your books that I'd just love to start with is this experience of intimacy with the divine, this love. You rarely meet a person who, I mean, I've met a lot of people who've had non dual experiences, samadhi, unitive experiences, but it's this love piece of it that is so rare. It reminds me of Rumi, in which the divine is the beloved. There's this sensual, intimate, intense quality of love. And you articulate that so well. And that's something that you've experienced from childhood before you became a nun. So just really curious to start there and what that was like for you, how that experience unfolded in your childhood.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you being able to say so clearly because uh, I feel such an intimacy with all of life because of that. And
Mm,
that word intimacy is often siloed into meaning one or another certain thing.
yeah.
Myself then having to try to explain what I mean by that outside of not being able to draw them into the experience because clearly if you don't have that experience in that way, that language is gonna seem pretty arbitrary to it. You know,
Hmm.
honest to goodness, Michelle, I I recognize it as a really tremendous grace, uh, in my own life.
Hmm.
Definitely, I wouldn't have known when I was little how to seek something like that. Like sometimes we're formed by everything. We're formed by our environment, by our relationships, by the cultural beliefs that are around us. And this seemed to be independent of that, but within it.
Hmm.
So, like, even though, I grew up Catholic, and that's a setup for great intimacy if you're open to the mystical part of it, because it
Yeah.
is relationship and it's very sacramentally driven, meaning that it's setting you up for being in the unknown. So in a way you could say there's influence there, but it was coming at all different times, like you read in my book. And so it wasn't like I was attaching it to a certain formula or a certain belief or a certain system. And
Hmm.
it was it was my greatest consolation, really. I think all of us in childhood, we have a variety of experiences. And I think there's few of us that don't have trauma in our childhood. Um, you can even have trauma by somebody saying something benign that they didn't even mean. So, it's rare. I think trauma is part of the wisdom path that we're all given. Um, but within my various wondering life and confusing moments when I was little, and even exultant moments, the answers always came through this intimacy, through this presence.
Hmm.
I held. I was held and beheld. And
Yeah.
while there's been a lot of different stages of my growing and what that means, on a essence level, on a real fundamental level, I got it when I was little. Like I think children know love when they're held and when they're loved, they know love.
Hmm.
I was feeling myself loved, you know,
Oh,
and safe and beheld. And that was really profound for me and still remains very, very much alive, and not through dogma, just through the way I even look at life.
yeah. Yeah. It's a human experience, isn't it? It's an experience that exists outside of any tradition, any approach. I've had that experience, not to the profound and frequent level you have. I know other people who've had it, very, very few though. And it's this moment of, as you say, feeling, I think you said feeling beheld, feeling this incredible sense that you're love and feeling that you are love and this heart opening. I think some people call it a heart opening. And one of the things I think you said in your first book, maybe both, is that, which you just articulated now, it's that there's nothing you can do to make that happen. There's not a practice, there's not a ritual, there's not, there's not a prayer. It is grace. It is something that happens through you from something else. That's my take on it.
That reflection, right? But then it gets kind of tricky, right? Because we are agents in our life. And
Mm,
how is it that we can look at something and receive magnanimously some form of grace?
mm,
Is that we aren't the author of that receiving, but we are somehow part of this agency that's very mysterious.
mm.
We get ourselves ready for it. We set up for it. I think I had
Yeah.
a personality predisposition to it. I think there's aspects of me that are very adventurous and very interested in the unknown outside of this form. Not like the unknown. I thought it's so funny. I was laughing because I watched something recently about some astronauts going out into space, and I'm like, oh my God, I would never want to do that.
Me either.
I was like be in that small little contraption with you love to have the experience of all the spaciousness, but not that little thing where,
No, no.
"What is that? Like, how can I say I'm so adventurous if I would be, like, terrified to be in a spaceship?" But
Yeah.
different kinds of adventurous spirits, and mine is in these dimensionality ways.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. My partner's like motorbikes, surfing, skydiving, and I'm like, I'd really love to meditate for like a few hours on a Saturday and really, explore my consciousness in a different kind of way. He's like, "What? That's fun?" Like, "Yeah."
I'm with you.
And I'm not gonna break anything either, so that's a plus,
Oh.
you know? Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I
yeah,
think, in my ministry, because you mentioned, me having a chance to talk with many people that have a variety of experiences that you could frame as somewhat unitive or
yeah.
where they're connected with self. And I do think that the experience itself forms a lot of how we serve. And
Mm,
I can hold space for anybody in any belief system. They don't need to believe they're going to have an intimacy with a beloved, but
yeah,
there's always a way that they connect with themselves
yeah.
with an intimacy that goes beyond the words of tenderness. Uh,
Mm,
that's that unconditional being seen quality. So I think that part is unique about my service is that people tend to come into contact with themselves pretty quickly in those ways and
mm.
evolve from there or grow from there or heal from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really curious about what you're doing now, but we'll get to that. I wanna go back to how as a child you're having these experiences of this love and you're raised as a Catholic, so in a way it's a natural orientation towards Catholicism and that particular relationship with God, but then you come across cr- mystical Christian mysticism with Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, and that takes you on this path. I think that's what takes you on this path towards this particular kind of monastery experience, the Carmelite order, if that's what it's called.
It absolutely did. What had happened was, and this would be the topic for another conversation, but my mystical experiences had started to naturally grow. And then were naturally growing, I had an NDE, a near-death experience. After that NDE, I was only very lightly in this world. I mean, my world was so blown open in this intimacy that I was like
Mm.
Eckhart park bench. I mean, I was just, you know,
How old were you when that
ni
happened?
19,
19, yeah.
and I monastery when I was 24. So that
Yeah.
period, I kind of honeymoon period, it wasn't just that things were lit up and the synchronicities, it was that I could barely be outside of deep states of ecstasy and bliss. And there was a lot of phenomenon and a lot of and all of that, and you read this in the book because I think it's so funny, is I really it was my head telling me I should have a spiritual director. Wise thing to do is have a spiritual director when you're having growth that you want to have and that's dramatic.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story in the book? Because I couldn't find one.
Yes, and you know what? I didn't actually know what a spiritual director was. I did when I read your book, but what happened was a client of mine was saying, "Oh, there's this place south of Sydney called the Hermitage, and it's a order of I can't remember. It's not Carmelite, but something else, not so dissimilar." And she said that you can stay in accommodation and you can have silence. And of course, for me, this is like, this is a drug that I crave. So I'm like, what? I can go somewhere and have silence. And she said, yes. And when you're there, if you want, you can have spiritual companionship. You can have a companion." And I was like, what is that?" And then she explained spiritual directorship. And then I met someone that I'm going to have on the podcast who's a spiritual director. I wrote a book on the history of spiritual direct. I'd
Oh,
love for you to just briefly explain what that is for my audience that might not know, because I was actually blown away that there's this thing that happens in the Christian tradition, which is someone who can facilitate or help you to make sense or navigate experiences of the divine. So it's kind of outside of a more scripture oriented, maybe not entirely. Maybe I'll let you explain.
yeah, no, it's great. And I too, I hate that word spiritual director. Uh, spiritual and that's more confusing to people that know the term spiritual director. And it is, I think people are they have a natural gift for it. So I was doing it before being trained, but I've also been classically trained. And
Mm,
if you were to parallel it with maybe being a psychologist, so a psychologist learns patterns, it learns
mm, yeah.
beliefs of the brain, of the body. It learns, and it learns how to help a person understand is quite similar, except the director, that would be the role of the person supporting you, is there 100% to support your relationship with the divine.
Yes.
The training is geared towards being able to hear what you're
Mm,
saying or what you're truly longing for, and also be able to offer the presencing, the reflection, and this is the tools that can help you move forward. And God, for many years I had a spiritual director, and I mean, I grew by leaps and bounds. I don't have one recently because I haven't found the one for this stage of my journey, but it
yeah.
makes a massive difference in your life. It,
Yeah.
it, but I tell you, the people that have been with me for years, if they looked back, they wouldn't even recognize themselves. No, and I have a very sharp memory, and I don't bring up progression because it's not linear. But here and there, I'll say, "Oh my word, it's like you're like a completely different person. Do you remember
Yeah.
that year? No, when this contraction was holding you so bound, and now you're flying," or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have a mentor therapist who has that plays that role for me within a tradition or a group that I was a part of to help with an embodied awakening, which is a different but similar kind of experience. And I've been through that process, but I continue to work with him, and it is absolutely gold because you're human. You're always evolving. There's always a something that happens. And yeah, to have someone be able to reflect that back and hold you in that space and help you remember, who you are,
Yeah,
underneath the turbulence that is life is key. And in your story, the most crazy thing is that here you are, this young woman having these experiences, and like initially, none of the spiritual directors there, like they didn't know what to make of it. They're like, what? I don't know. Maybe you need more sleep, or you know.
it was so off. It was hilarious. What was interesting is because I was a young woman, I had all sorts of things that young women have. Like, I really didn't worry if it was real, what was happening.
Mm,
I was being so changed. It makes me want to cry. I was being so changed in such a beautiful way.
yeah.
The truth of it was its own verification to me.
Mm,
So I wasn't doubting, but I did have the normal insecurities that any young woman usually has. No, who am I in this? Um, what's okay to talk about?
mm,
I fit? All sorts of things that, because I was lucky that I was in Santa Cruz, California, where I happened chance in a group of about 8 people who were all having, I was younger in that group, but everybody had either dramatic awakening experiences or were having them. And I was lucky.
mm.
provided for because even though we didn't talk about our experiences, there was an implicit support of belonging there. But if I had,
Mm,
I probably would have been not sure, like, where do I go? What do I do? Not fit normal social structures. Uh, I just couldn't. I could live in the norms and obey them, punch in the card to work and that, but I couldn't fit. I was seeing things so differently through what was happening. So it was
yeah,
that I couldn't find somebody, and even that last one, the story that you read where it got it's like and he was renowned as a contemplative. So I was like, "This'll be my life." And when he totally didn't get it, I just it was so perfect because it was then that I totally gave up, and it was within, what, a week that my roommate gave me the autobiography of Teresa of Avila.
right. Yeah.
I heard of her. I was baptized in a church called Thérèse of Lisieux, a Carmelite church. I'd never even heard of the Carmelites.
Wow.
And so then I'm reading this book and I wept. I read straight through, wept. She was immediately a friend of mine, immediately showed up in my life as real as you are here. And that happened with all the Carmelites. They became
Yeah.
as close of friends to me as anybody that I was around. And it was natural to wanna be with them. It was natural to want a monastic
Mm.
because there was kind of that, "This is home to me."
Yeah.
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 Now, was that like it very well could have been past life, it very
Who
well,
knows?
had my culture broadened me out to know there were different forms of monasticism, would I have chosen, like, Zen Buddhism or something that was similar? But
Mm.
but we don't know those things. I could only just
No.
look and say, anything that was contemplative, att
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many paths, and what I love about your path is that it was always uniquely your own, even within a very rich tradition. You
yeah,
go into this experience of being a Carmelite nun when you were 24, 23, 24, and this very, very highly structured environment initially. So, Kimberly was in two different monasteries, and the first one, which was in North Dakota or South Dakota, I
yeah,
always forget. Yeah,
every
yeah.
Buddha.
It was very, very structured, and then she moved to another one in down south in Texas, or yeah, that was uh, much a little bit more. Well, there's a little bit more room. I remember in the first one, it was so literally so highly structured that there wasn't much time to just sort of find your way, kind of ask yourself, what might I do in this moment? Because every moment had its little place in the schedule. And then finally to be in a place where you could actually have a moment to go, well, what do I want to do? I mean, incredible. But nevertheless, within all of that, within the structure, within the non-structure, at the center of your experience was a very direct, personal, intimate relationship with the divine that actually went outside of tradition or scripture to the extent that you lived it, you felt it. It was something moving within you. It wasn't just something externally given to you. You came in with this fire, and the external environment shaped you in certain ways and opened you in certain ways, but essentially it was just always you. So with that, you could have been anywhere, and you still would have had this experience just with a different framework, with a different languaging. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. That was at the heart of it. And, I came to learn that everyone joins monasteries for different reasons. I think there was a certain naivety in me. I wasn't disillusioned at all, but I think there was a naivety to think this would be the only reason you would enter would be that you were already on fire. Because why would you leave your family and your friends and so many things unless you were absolutely on fire the way I was on fire? And then I found, actually there are many flowers in the field. There's, some people were attracted to just simply that kind of schedule. Others wanted just the simplicity. Others felt they were seeking. They were seeking to get in touch with themselves. Where I was coming in already having a really keen, So that
Yeah.
was interesting. And it was interesting to see, uh, how I mean, I shared in my book the dream I had where Therese reminded me I would experience the world in the monastery, because it was interesting to me how when it came down to it, mysticism wasn't mystical experiences were not highly favored in monastic life. And you would have thought or hoped that it's the place where everybody's supported to have these experiences. But there was a little bit more care to obedience and the rule. And
Mm.
if you look back at the stories, have you read like a lot of monastic stories where like Mary Magdalene de Pazzi and from a Carmelite in Florence, Italy, she go into ecstasy as she was cooking the eggs for the community. And they're holding the pan lost in bliss for like a couple hours. And that doesn't feel so well when people are waiting to eat, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know people who've had these experiences outside of that context, and they'll just be like, for days, I'm kind of wandering through the streets, almost, a miracle that I wasn't hit by a car because I'm in this it's not a state that's conducive to living life on the ground necessarily. As wonderful it is as it is. But that's so interesting that there wasn't this prizing of those mystical experiences. Something that you said that it really struck me was this idea, and I can't remember, you'll have to help me if this is a perspective of the Carmelites or just more generally, living in a monastery setting, that the purpose of that through this contemplative life, the nun is there's a transmission involved, and just by being in this context, she's somehow saving the world or contributing to goodness in the world. Maybe you could say it better than me. That was really quite fascinating to me because it comes back to something that I experience and believe, and I spoke about this in a whole episode of my season 1 of this podcast, where I talk about multidimensionality being something that can save us. Is this idea that when you go through this, and I just use the word awakening, which is just, I know, very hackneyed, and everyone has a different definition of what that means. So it's kind of dangerous territory. But
Yeah.
if when you have an experience of this intimate experience with reality, with the divine, with reality, however you frame it, something in you changes. And I believe, and I experience that then there's a transmission that is really alive in you that affects other people in a real sense. It's like dropping that pebble in the pond and there's a ripple effect. And I
Yeah.
think it's always the case with any kind of profound transformation. We always have a transmission anyway, but there's a certain quality of it that shifts after this experience. And so I was quite fascinated when you mentioned this, that there's this belief that, when you're living this monastic life, that you are somehow healing the world. I wonder if you could explain that or speak to that.
Yeah. I went in knowing the power, and I think because I grew up in a charismatic family, there was a lot of 100% belief in the power of prayer and
Mm.
on hands and the power of prophecy like that. And if this is how I frame it in my mind, and maybe language will work universally. If you think of what is happening in prayer, so if I'm sitting alone in my room and I am praying for somebody and I'm participating and I can tell there's something flowing and right in my prayer. I can feel that something's moving and stirring. And then that person 10 miles away goes through some kind of uplift. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's the right message coming at the right time. Maybe it's the right person showing up for an emotional support, whatever it is.
Mm.
I was experiencing growing up over and again, and I'm so intellectually curious, is that I kept seeing that prayer makes a difference. And you could see that it was non local.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, it's like, well, what could have greater impact than becoming divine love? like, you know, and you wouldn't even need to be intentional, like thinking of 5 billion people, literally becoming more and more the essence of love that we are by virtue of that embodiment itself going to affect everything that it's in connection with. And if creation is interdependent, and they can prove that now with
Mm,
methods, then one thing in one place always affects things. And so, um, with then this kind of setup and this dogma around part of a Carmelite's call is to be of service 24/7 to all the world. To be an
mhm,
outpouring of prayer for the world, but an outpouring like an instrument also of God's love for the world. And I don't use the word God so much in my language. So if you're listening, know that I'm not really in a tradition anymore because that word God has been so blown open. But it's a good hanger, right? It's a good little point stone.
mhm.
And that was so easy to know about because I had so many experiences of people praying and things happening and me praying
Mm.
and it just
Yeah.
was all then that it would be easy. And I also, before I had entered, I had read Therese of Lisieux's autobiography of a soul, and she was a remarkable
Mhm,
Carmelite. She died when she was 24. Her book is if you can she wrote it in the late 1800s is when she lived, and she's French.
mhm.
So, yeah, if you wanna read it, anybody, or Michelle, if you wanna read it, if you can let yourself get past the French flowery, religious sounding language, drop into what she's really saying, you
Mhm.
blown to pieces. And she is so audacious that she even at one point experiences in a Hebrew text that's in the Bible called the Song of Songs.
Yes, this song, yeah.
She says, "Draw me and we will follow you." And her
Mhm.
in that was all she needed to do was keep her eyes on the beloved, and everyone that was meant to be connected with her would receive floods of grace. Draw,
Yes. Yeah.
he will follow. I mean, how profound is that theology at 21 years old?
Incredible. I mean, I have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old, so my mind is like, I understand those ages. I mean, that's crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so people were, around me. I received support. My mom and dad are always supported people in that, but people didn't really understand because I'm very gregarious and very much. I'm at heart. I'm really introvert, but I feel so much connection with the world that
Mm.
I'm at ease. I'm off as extrovert,
Yeah.
and people could not understand why would I not be part of the world when I'm so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and yet yeah, I love the female community camaraderie that kind of seeps through the story of your time, and I know it wasn't always easy. There were some very difficult relationships, very challenging, and yet also one of the things I most love is that inevitably when, as a group of nuns, you discovered there was a new woman joining the order, there was all this excitement around, "Oh, like, there's someone new coming," and, the most beautiful, experience of a very healthy feminine energy. We're going to welcome her, and everyone's kind of competing to know, I'll show her where she sleeps, and I'll show her the books we're going to read, and I'll take her to the choir. And it was just so beautiful to witness. And for me, that seems very very alluring to, you know, in the modern world as an adult, in my 50s, really hard to meet new people, and especially, it's like your life, you've got work and your clients and kids and I think, oh gosh, to be in this place where you're just surrounded by, um, so I guess this is all to say that you're not in the world, and yet there is an aspect that is more social in a way than some of these the way that we socialize in this isolated, post-capitalist world where we go to work and come home to our suburb and work and come home. I mean, it's tempting to idolize, to idealize that a little bit. I know
Yeah.
it's more complex than that, but it's still something.
I think it's great that you pointed that out, and you have me thinking out loud as you're saying it. It was awesome to be in community and to be part of a community that was we held the same ideals, right?
Oh,
And it really was for me when I was on the side of being the new one, I was not good at receiving that attention. I mean, I'm I'm an Aries, and it wasn't that I was resistant to the love, but I'm kind of independent, and to have everyone delighting at all my reactions to everything was a level of intimacy that I was so unaccustomed to. It's like every time there was a new ritual and they knew I was gonna be surprised by the banquet or by the candles that were lit or something, you could see everybody kind of like that, like looking back at me, like right as I'm walking in,
yeah.
you know? And it was hard. I look back and I'm like, gosh, I wish I had been more gracious, more like, and let them feel my excitement more. But I was so embarrassed because I grew up as an American independent young woman, and you weren't little girls like that together. And it was so awesome to actually become that little girl who had that excitement for the new one that would come in. Yeah. But show us that it doesn't have to be a religious context or we could or what could we do that we might have that community? Because I really do think we're meant to have much more social
Mm-mm.
in each other's lives, rejoicing with each other, walking
Yeah.
not just your nuclear family, but the village, if you will. And
Yeah.
I see other countries. I've led some retreats in Spain, and I see that happening there. I've
Yeah.
led recently in Mexico, and that's happening out the gazoo there. And
Yeah.
we wanna have it here. I have friends that feel the same way, but the setup of the life doesn't allow it.
Yeah, and there's such a enhanced awareness of this in so many different conscious communities that we need it, and people are starting to create that in different contexts. And I think there's definitely a recognition that community is important, and we heal in community. One of the most profound books for me, kind of in training and counseling and psychotherapy, was by Judy Atkinson, who's it's an Aboriginal woman psychologist who ran these group programs in Aboriginal communities in Australia, and she talks about an Aboriginal way of healing trauma, that it has to happen in a group, and that the group holds that collective trauma. And obviously there's been a lot of collective trauma,
Y
all over the world with First Peoples, but it's really this understanding as you read through her book and her research. It's called Trauma Trails, that community isn't just where we celebrate, it's where we heal collective wounds to our people, to our culture, to our society. And there's just so much richness and bonding in that context. And I see more and more, women's groups popping up and men's sheds popping up. And I feel like we're just at the very beginning of a paradigm shift in that regard, and that more and more people are really hungering for it. And to bring it back to this idea of transmission, one of the things that also came through from your experience is that when a sister had an experience of the Holy Spirit or experience of Mother Mary, this lived experience of love and bliss, everyone benefited. It was like she
Oh,
suddenly was lit up and everyone was basking in her light. And that ties into this idea of community, because we need it for healing, as Atkinson said, we need it for community, as we've spoken about, and we need it for the evolution of consciousness, for transmission, because when one node in this larger network in a community has that connection, everyone benefits and we all evolve together. There're just so many reasons we need it.
Yes, I love that. I love that reflection. I haven't thought about that in a while, and it's so true. And we I think even the fact that because I work with people who are seeking, seeking community, seeking so many things that their surroundings don't afford for them, and it doesn't seem to go away. It does seem pretty fundamental to us as human beings, and we
Mm.
find a way, right? We find our way, but we manage or we exercise resilience over not having certain things. But also to be a little bit of a I like to look at things from different angles too, and you have me thinking as well that we have oftentimes created limiting tribal constraining ways of being in community.
True.
And where there's lack of community for some, it's largely because they've said no to what doesn't serve them anymore. Like, they could
Mm.
have stayed within the church that didn't serve them anymore, and that church, if they broke their leg, they would have helped each other, right? Or they would have all
Mm.
the bake sale, or they would have so that there would have been they would have prayed together, so there would have been these advantages of community, but a lot of times, I know the people I serve have walked away from things because
Yeah.
there's in them that's urging. And I was lucky in monastic life because there were certain things that I knew I didn't resonate with. But in monastic life, you're living in silence and you're farming the land so it doesn't push upon you so much
Mm.
to believe what my leader believed to fit in my community. And
Mm.
that I probably wouldn't have stayed because as I got to know her beliefs, they were way more conservative than I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that transition like for you after leaving the monastic life, having a community for better, for worse, included all the things, and
Yeah.
then exiting the world? And of course, I'm eagerly awaiting your third book in the series, which is because the second book, you moved to another monastery. You single handedly, not single handedly, you have a lot of help, but you essentially project manage the construction of an enormous monastery in the desert, which is an amazing story in itself of how you managed to make this happen and all of the incredible support and synchronicities, etc. But then I know that you leave. However, you haven't haven't published your third book, so I don't know the details. And of course, I have so many questions, but just for now, what was that transition like, going from community to yeah, to leaving that? Like, yeah, how did you recreate it, or how did you navigate that?
Yeah, and I'm deciding even, like, does it fit in the 3rd book, or should I plan on being ready to have a 4th one? Because that was such dramatic.
Mm.
You there's 2 answers. The first answer that hits on the core is that I was so clear that my next step with the beloved was to leave, so
Yeah.
in a way, reform didn't matter, and I've never lost that piece. I mean,
Mm.
I I never even when it's a beautiful story of how I learned it was my next step, but that has never faded. So I was really lucky. I never had to discern anything. I didn't have
Mm.
doubts. I didn't have to go through a lot of things that oftentimes happen. So that was there. On the other end of it, the leaving process itself. Oh my gosh. I entered pre-cell phone computer. I left post-cell phone
Yeah.
computer. I came out, we hadn't had radio and TV and things like that 10 and a half years.
Yeah. I can imagine. I was gonna ask you about that. That would be because even just in your second book, you left the monastery to go to get equipments and supplies to build this monastery, and you stop on some roadside, I don't know, 7-Eleven, and you're like, like, "When when did they create slushy machines? Like, what is this?" And then you all are so excited by these enormous things of soda that you just pee your way through the rest of your trip because I just was laughing, all these nuns with these and then all of you have to pee because you've just yeah, fantastic. But yeah, I mean, that's just one thing.
It was everything. I mean, I had shaved head, not hadn't worn plain clothes. I'm coming out in the world. I mean, my my sister, because I flew to my sister. She was so wonderful. She bought me a plane ticket that
Mm.
had no layovers anywhere because she knew that that would be crazy making to make such a change. So I flew right to her and went to her house, and I remember within the week we watched a movie, and I because I was like an adult child, I was like one with the movie. I mean, I had no s it was terrible. It was like, these dramatic happening, and I was like almost like on a physical roller coaster. It was crazy. Never
But that
had it.
just also that shows you how numb we've become to
Yeah,
entertainment, but separate conversation. I'm sure we could deconstruct that one. But yeah, you had a childlike, yeah, amazing.
and no
But
need for
yeah,
it on anything, right? So
yeah,
so it was really, interesting. It was really interesting change. It was very all-consuming. I was really provided for in that I had gotten a scholarship to go to seminary and do grad work,
yeah.
and that was complete divine providence. I mean, the fact that I was 2.5 months before I went to that university, but that 2.5 months meeting up with my family again, staying long periods with my mom and my dad and my sister, and reacclimating, getting to be with them, which was great joy. And then going to a very protected environment. It was a small, university with only 200 students from all over
Wow,
the world. So I got this global perspective of people all in ministry from all over the world, and we were like our own little cocoon. I mean, we were in DC, which was chaos of itself, but I was really provided for, with that transition, and it gave me
wow,
the ease that I didn't have to rise up into anything too fast or to
yeah,
perform.
mm, yeah,
Uh, I don't know that I could have just kind of, quote, unquote, "gotten a job" and
yeah,
all of a sudden done a bunch of stuff.
yeah.
But learn was easy. To be in an academic setting was really easy. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar transition, I imagine, when you've come out of prison for forever many years. It's
Yeah, I would think, and I think we don't serve those people well, do we? There's not
no.
many programs that really help people adjust, and, I would imagine some people in prison just wish they were back in prison because they
Oh,
probably.
it's very common. From what I've read, very common that you have a whole routine and a community, and we underestimate the social connect. I mean, there are obviously a lot that are toxic, but there's a social connectivity and there's routine and any kind of yeah. But it's just could be in any setting when you go from a setting that has a certain familiarity and then suddenly you're in a totally different environment. I think it doesn't matter the context. It's potentially very hard for it could be a real crisis for the psyche. We crave safety, don't we, as humans? That's what our brains want. So it does sound like you were held through that in a beautiful way, which is just also confirmation that that was your path.
Yeah, so true. I agree. I think you're just spot on with that. Yeah.
Mm. And so then you come out, and I just want to encourage all of those who are listening and watching this to check out Kimberly's books because they're really beautiful. Love Calls, and I'll put them in the show notes, Miracles in the Naked Light. So you come out of this experience and you you go to seminary. At what point did you begin to connect in with other traditions and start to understand your experience within a different context and kind of widen that lens?
Right, right. I would say, and again, it was part setup, part of naturally what happened. So I'm in DC,
Yeah.
and 9/11 happens while I'm in DC.
Oh no. Oh my goodness.
2 weeks, 2.5 weeks after I'd gotten there, and I'm still even acclimating to the world. So you can
Oh,
only.
that's insane. Crazy.
Right, but I am surrounded by people of all different traditions coming out of the woodwork. In
Yeah.
addition, our seminary was It was in collaboration with other universities. So I was in a setup of people of all different backgrounds. And because of my curiosity about the nature of experience, I naturally drew connections very quickly. You know,
Mm,
I think my mystical experiences in the monastery um, dissolved the dogmatic formulas.
mm,
And I didn't know it until I came up against the contrast to find that I automatically could see the deeper connecting lines and the different languages for very similar things. But so that was a good, you're letting me even reflect. I don't know that I said that out loud that way, but it was
mm.
just contact with it that I'm like, oh, I don't have exclusive lens I'm looking at. It's just, I'm just in touch with, and then my brain could go, "Oh, these words, that, and that process is similar there." And then I would say, though, that it was still a growing because I had one of my best friends was very much into goddess language, and I can remember very playfully, that was like a foreign language to me. I mean, I had surrendered into this, not that I thought God was a guy, but I had kinda surrendered into the language. And
Yeah,
my good friend in seminary with me in a Catholic environment, and she's goddess this and goddess that, and at first, at bars, I'm like, I c and it was it only probably took a couple months because then I brought it out so fast, it was kind of like I was fast tracking, uh, anything that didn't serve the greater reality kept falling away, kept coming up, falling away, coming up, falling away, coming up, falling away, and I would say then in my final paper for my master's, I began my topic, which didn't get approved because they said it was doctoral work and not master's work, and I wasted a whole summer writing and it was really my fault. I mean, I didn't learn what goes into a master's paper. I thought, "I'll just
yeah.
things." So I spent my whole summer researching, and I wanted to study what it means to be in the present moment in
Oh,
different traditions. You know, I chose Sufism, Catholicism, and Toltec, really.
oh, very different.
Yeah, it was only because of what I was exposed to at the time. I think
Yeah.
I'd had some Rumi poetry and I read Don Miguel Ruiz's books and
Okay. Yeah.
but I went to turn it in. They're like, "No, this would be what you would do for a doctoral dissertation because you're pioneering new ground with your conclusions. A master's isn't that. A master's is showing you understand things. It's not
Mm.
it's not
Yeah.
making postulations." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Um So, all said and done, I guess I had broadened out in that 3 years really dramatically.
Yeah. 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 Fascinating. I think that's such an important takeaway for everyone hearing this, that there is a there's always a wider frame than the one that we exist in, and it can keep widening over time. And the I think the thing that happens in my experience, I haven't done the level of, well, obviously, I've had a lot of kids and lived this very, suburban life, certain exposures to, clients and so on, a lot of independent study, working with groups, certainly not to your level, but just in my limited experience, every time I've gone into trying to understand another tradition or enlarging that framework or learning the language around it, studying it to whatever extent, there's this moment where I put the book away and I drop back into Michelle and I just go, oh, like I am I am the unifying principle here. I am the thing that connects everything, not me individually, but it all comes back to my experience. It's kind of this sense of being like, what really matters is who I am in relation to all of it, my experience of myself as something that's larger than myself, and everything else is, I find I guess what I'm trying to say, not very well, is I find myself then again in the center of it all, and then I have to make sense of it in my life as Michelle, this embodied real world life where, it's that chop wood, carry water thing where I get up every day and I tend to the family, and I tend to my, my chores, and I tend to my inner life, and I tend to my relationships, and I tend to my clients, that it all kind of comes back into this very personal embodied experience. And you realize, well, I have realized that all of these other traditions and everything has a certain beauty and profundity, eh, to the extent that we can weave that in and live as that. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I love the way you language to that. I really do. My hope is to really support others in discovering that they can live in presence right where they're at. And
Mm,
I certainly, given my fascination with this whole everything we're talking about, I certainly have been fortunate that I've been able to, dive in to depths with the singular focus of just that, and had set up around me that's supporting me in doing the dive,
mm,
and something to be said for that. But, if we truly believe that we're the embodiment of consciousness in form, and we're discovering what that is, even just saying that alone is really enough to position
mm,
the entire day and to let everything else in our entire day find its place within that,
mm.
and developing the attunement to stay faithful to the course of ourselves that way.
Amazing. What did you discover in your thesis that you weren't allowed to finish? Was there an aha moment with connecting presence across these different traditions? Did you arrive at any conclusion?
I have to look back. I think I was in process. I was deep in the overlay of the similarities and
Mm,
needed an advisor to help me make sense of the distinctions, the things that weren't the same or didn't look like they were the same.
mm,
There was no advisor that had that formation, and that's why, they said, "Well, this is doctoral," and there are no advisors that have any background in mystic Islam and, the Toltec tradition, so I was kind of left hanging, and I've got that paper somewhere. I haven't looked at it. It's been 25 years,
mm,
but, I think I was in process, and I was successful at finding lines of continuity. It's like, oh my gosh,
mhm,
recently, back in 2017, when I was first no, I was first turned on to the various tantric philosophies in
mm,
then 9. I started going really deep in it. I started going real deep in, 2014. In 2017, I had gone deep enough that I found 7 fundamental parallels in the experience of reality between the non-dual Shaiva Tantra school of thought from the 1200s
wow.
and Christ. And I spoke about it at a conference called SAND that doesn't exist
Oh,
anymore.
oh, I know sand.
Yeah, SAND is awesome, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they're online. I love Zaya Maurizio's, what they've been doing, but the conference doesn't exist anymore because the lockdown made it too hard financially to keep going. But,
yeah.
I found 7 really powerful foundational premises that both trains of thought hold as true. So I think that with that paper, I found these unifying principles, but I really needed help or time to research the distinctions so that
Mm,
being fluffy
yeah.
and not missing some contrast that deserved some attention and addressing and that. So
Yeah, that's fascinating. I remember I watched most of your interview on Buddha at the gas pump, and you mentioned in there that when you discovered this Shaiva Tantra tradition, it made sense of something for you of your non-dual unitive heart-opening experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It did. Because I think the experience to me, the experience of Christ, that we could say, okay, it happened in a historical Jesus in all fullness. If you want to say that, I'm not even saying you need to say that. It's an embodied incarnational spirituality.
Mm.
And these schools of Tantra, but the one I was speaking about there had the most penetrating articulation of reality, of creation that is just that in such sophistication. I had never run across any writings that could say it so elegantly.
Mm.
Undeniable. I'm like, I know that reality. I was reading, I'm like, I know this reality. This is it. So yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so fascinating. It's something we've always known as humans throughout time and different traditions with different languaging and I in other cultures there's been probably a deeper level of understanding and acceptance and what has happened through Western Christianity.
Yeah.
And yet here we are as humans having to be human and live this embodied reality and navigate not just hopefully some of these unitive states, non-ordinary states, but also navigate our lives and just you know the suffering that's inherent to life and the challenges we always have to kind of come up against. And how did so coming out of your so coming into this non your life after the monastery and your study and working with people did and coming into this modern, I think, quite isolated life that a lot of people live,
Mm.
how how did that integrate for you in terms of, yeah, just normal, not normal, normal human life and integrating your spirituality after this monastic experience,
Yeah.
blending the merging the two together.
It's a really good question. I think I'm still discovering that answer. What I find is, and this is I think every path is unique, and my path has been as I'm on the edge of my own truth in the reality that I'm in, I tend to keep growing in that truth. And so it ends up
Mm.
just bringing what was the safety or what was. And I have had over the past 25 years some pretty uh, extreme navigations. Like when I fit in parish after that, very progressive. They called me a minister. Like that's how progressive this church was. And I didn't fit in a lot of ways, but I did fit in a lot of ways. Well, long story short, after 3 years in that, I end up being banned by the bishop. So here I am living out the fullness of my spiritual leadership as a woman. And I hate to be gender specific, but it's still a very
Yeah, for
spirituality,
sure. Yeah.
not humanity, just spirituality is still very male dominated as an industry. So if you're going to like have a
Yes.
career and make a living in that, it's
Yeah,
still very,
be known as a thought leader, as a spiritual teacher, absolutely. It's something I think I've written about, yeah.
yeah. So, and there I lost 80% of my income. And I've had things like that where I'm continuing to be true to what life is revealing to me, what the divine is revealing to me. And in my way of being all in, it just inaugurates these moments where, well, okay, I can't fit there anymore. Okay, I can't fit there. And the losses aren't as great because, I'm a solopreneur now. So I manage my yeses and my nos more. I'm less beholden to a structure that might say, oh, you don't fit anymore. We're taking away your salary, you know, but I still have the
Mm.
challenge of how, as a woman with no lineage, that is a thought spiritual leader, have stability in our world. And I'm still navigating that, Michelle. I
Well,
so
you know what, Kimberly? This is my life. This is my life.
yes, yes.
I'm navigating that as well. I feel you. Oh, I deeply feel you on this. Yeah, it's a thing. So many places to go with this. It's challenging. Well, that's actually one of the reasons I was so excited to have this conversation. And I know, you've been on other podcasts and so on, but I was really looking forward to woman, kind of mystic to mystic,
Yeah.
just putting it out there in the world. Like we need more feminine leadership. We need more women who are postmenopausal, with some life experience under their belt, not just mystical experience, but life experience. I mean, these are things I reflect on a lot, I and I'll just share with my audience, and it's going to make me cry. But that's okay. But, I've been going through a bit of a difficult patch myself because I'm in between housing and renting in one of the most expensive property markets in the world, and just keep getting rejections every time I apply, which is so frustrating because, I feel like I'm here to serve and I'm serving my clients and I know I'm doing good work and I'm doing this podcast, feeling so outside of the socioeconomic structure. And, as a solopreneur, doing this podcast on my own, all the editing, everything, and really had been slipping into this very familiar and almost comfortable victim-y kind of thing of, as the Course in Miracles would say, I'm not a victim of the world I see, but my mind is like, you are a victim of the world you see because you are, because you're a woman and you don't have the corporate income and, you're coming up against blah, 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 blah. And so I start, you know, this is my personal story. I'm really just praying in the way I pray, which is, again, not part of a tradition, not in any particular way, but just, you know, I need some support here. I need to find my way. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be that. It's very alluring, but I don't want to be that person. And so start reading your books way in advance of our interview. And I'm deeply affected by, I mean, the story is fascinating. We've covered a lot of it, but there is a quality in there that I noticed that I think really helped me, which is that in all of the difficulty you experienced in this monastic life, every challenge that arose, there is this orientation you had to, well, okay, this is hard and this is a challenge, but if I can just stay with it, there is something here for me. There is grace, there is growth, there is something here for me, and it just took me out of this state of feeling like I'm a victim of the world because I'm a woman and I'm just a do-gooder, but, not wealthy and blah, 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 and something really shifted in me with that, so thank you for that, first of all. That's really was
My
just
friend to friend, friend to friend. We share.
and
If you received a grace through that, it was only because maybe I received a grace to be able to communicate what was really happening in the ways that I find myself oriented in the world.
yeah,
And
and this is the thing with that, right? Is that this I want to have these conversations and I want to name these things because I feel that there is this quality of embodied spirituality in which we understand their challenges and we navigate them as best we can with grace and giving ourselves the grace to sometimes not do it well or to fall apart or whatever. And but there's this particular quality of it that I guess in my mind I feel like this is a feminine quality, a more, because I see a lot of male thought leaders and there's almost, not always, but there's almost this performance that there's a separation of our professional and personal lives, and we can present ourselves as perfect and, we've got it all figured out and here are all the here are all the ways to have these experiences. But as a woman and as a mother and as an entrepreneur, I can't do that because, life is just that's not my experience of life. I came through an embodied awakening with incredible grace through the mess of domestic life with children. And, I always say, and I think it's actually Ram Dass who said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Yeah.
Because those relationships, they're challenging. And I always say, you know, just if you've ever had the experience of being grocery shopping and your toddler has a tantrum on the floor and and it's completely losing it, like that is
Yeah.
life. We are not beyond that. There are these complexities. So I feel grateful to know other women are on this path. And yeah, I'm just grateful to hear your story. But I want to hear also more of what your current things are, your challenges, how you're walking in life as this, I think, divine human, divinely messy, divinely complex.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, first, let me celebrate you as you have a warrior priestess spirit about you, and thank you for staying true to that and not letting any of the inherent challenges of life dim that within you. It takes a lot of courage and staying the course.
It's fogging up my glasses. I'm just kidding so much.
Oh gosh.
Mhm.
I so presently there's a number of things I'm doing, and I have an online spiritual community, and
Mm.
that is sweet. You can join at a free level, you can join at an $11 a month level. It's not meant to have money be a barrier. The 11-month, yeah, obviously there's more interaction that happens. I do immersions, like mystic immersion. We'll do a 2-week intensive
Mm.
where I'll take a topic and it's really lovely and we go really deep with it. Do meditation immersions with that. So I have that piece. And then secondarily, I do private sessions. And then I usually have a few retreats that are open to people. I haven't put anything on the books for 2027 yet. I'm just kind of sitting because usually I like to bring people to some place they've never been. Uh, I like doing them in Mexico because the price for the retreat can be lower. I keep my prices as low as I physically can,
Yeah.
that you don't have to have price as a barrier to come, but it's gotta be high enough to cover the costs of
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Uh, those are the 3 active things that I'm doing, and then I also am speaking at places with this book. So the book is out right now, the message is alive, people are reading it, so people bring me in to give talks.
Mm.
And everything in the spiritual field, just like most everything, the way things have broken down from the lockdown period to economic things around the world going havoc to everything in my field is changing as well. So I'm
Mm.
actually sitting as well with a couple new questions. How is my ministry morphing to be of service in the present moment? So the active things I always have going,
Mm.
and that I see some new things coming forward, but I'm really at that incubation moment of what's the shape and the form with that. And that's not totally clear to me right now.
Mm. Because what are you seeing changing in the collective? What are your observations or what are you feeling? And how is that? And are you feeling any clarity around how I like this is how I need to serve differently?
I I don't have any doubts that I'm emerging with what's happening.
Mm.
I like
Yeah.
very specific, as you saw my book, Move Taker, if I get the call, man, I'm like bam, 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 bam. And so it's been a good exercise in patience for me,
Mm.
sitting in the fallow period. What I am seeing is that what happened with the lockdown, at least in the US, I can't speak internationally, a lot lost a lot of their communities.
Yes.
and they lost then funding to bring speakers in. And then maybe they even lost the ability to have a lead minister there. And this is
Mm.
word unity churches and CSL, and, progressive Methodists and, all, unless you're like a big entity, like, the Catholic Church has still got a fair amount of money coming
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
Uh, sure it's changing and affected. So with that, I was booked out a year in advance with speaking gigs always, and that's not the same anymore because and some of them even just do their things online.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they're find their way. What is community? What is spiritual community? I'm finding as well people re are in some ways letting go spiritual community to wonder like, well, where do I want to put my money and my time? You
Yeah.
know, maybe my spiritual community is my yoga community, which is just as vital and flourishing. So in my field of spirituality, the lay of the land, like sand not being physical anymore, there are numerous conferences I would speak at that would then be ways that people would attend my retreats or do things like that. All of those things have just simply changed. They're not gone. They're just going through their own
Yeah.
how they're going to be in the world. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think we'll go just virtual. I do think the in-person experience will come back strong in some way, but I don't know what it look
Yeah.
like.
I hope so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I feel this, and it's always a thing for me as well because I think as an entrepreneur, my audience is much bigger if it's online because there are no boundaries. But then, you miss that piece of that one-on-one is so important, and being in the physical presence with other people in space is so transforming. And I see other people do hybrids. I know, my favorite astrologer, if she's listening, I listen to Molly McCord a lot. I learned so much from her. It's one of my many interests, and, obviously her world is online. She does
Right.
evolutionary astrology and soul astrology, and it's always very personal when she's speaking of it. I always feel like she's just got this, like she's dialed into my soul, and I learned so much from her. I also do astrology. I also do evolutionary astrology. One of my favorite things to do is to look at someone's chart just to get a sense of where they've come kind of karmically and what their gift is. It's not specific, it's just general enough, but it's a good foundation. But anyway, she runs in-person retreats which then emerge out of her online community. So she does courses and a podcast, and then when she puts a call out to do these in-person events, a certain percentage of people show up. I would love to do a similar thing because I see the value in both. I used to run retreats years ago, and I started doing body work. I ran body work retreats and de-armoring retreats, and it was I loved it. It was always so powerful for people, and I was just broken by the end of it. Like just like give me a week off. Holding that space, and then I never made any money from it really. It's just like I just kind of scraped by. And everyone would be like, "Oh, that was just amazing." And I was like broken on the couch with $2 in the bank. So it is a tricky thing I would like to get back to it. So I hear that that's changing in the world. Yeah.
And I think as well, just to add, because I understand when you refer to woman, solopreneur, and all of that, I can feel, a real kinship there. I also love to remember that we're pioneering a new paradigm.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think you're right. And that means that when you're first and you're figuring it out, it is tougher. There isn't a roadmap.
Mm-mm. And there's not already a built-in value of it. I remember
Yes.
I started teaching meditation at a yoga studio back in 2006. I was their one meditation teacher. And she said to me, she said, because back then you'd go into Barnes and Noble and you'd see maybe two books on meditation, maybe. And
Mm.
those would be just Buddhist, just Vipassana or something like that. And yeah, I remember my good friend who had founded that studio, she said, because she was quite a bit older, she said,
Mm.
you are doing for meditation what I was doing for yoga in 1972.
Ah,
1972, she said everyone was looking at yoga and going, it was woo woo. And it considered that anymore, right?
yeah.
It's it's like one of the rages. It's like a main part of our world.
Mm,
No, I like to remember that, and especially when we are called into thought leadership, we're breaking down
yes.
paradigms of spirituality. We're breaking down old methods,
Yes.
what community looks like. We're
Yeah.
not doing away with everyone's gifts being honored, but we're breaking down old hierarchical blind.
Yes. Yes.
So,
I'm so yeah.
so we get the gift of doing that, and that is so exciting. That there's just something so juicy and exciting about getting to be part of that.
Yes. I agree, and then thank you. Thank you for that reframe for me. That's important to remember because I often think how can I, what does it mean to create a community in a way that's authentic to who I am as a person, to womanhood, and that's why I say, for me a part of it is this authenticity. I want to I want to transmit wisdom, but part of that wisdom is that I'm human, Part of that wisdom is I'm human and life
Yeah.
can be tough and I have emotions and I have good days and bad days and I struggle and there's wisdom and I think that's so important especially with what we're seeing with certain files being released and certain people falling off their pedestals. I think that's a real course corrective. I think I want to be in a world where we have access to wisdom, which gives us permission to be human and not to have to live up to an artificial ideal of perfection. There isn't one way. We're
Yeah.
all finding our way. We're all finding our way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, as we're wrapping up, what is the quantum shift work you do? And also, I want to let people know about some of your
Yeah.
courses because I checked out your courses and I'm actually really interested in the one that's the is it the Teresa it's
Oh,
this Teresa v yeah, yeah,
oh, boy, I love her. And I just had a medium reading. I was volunteering to help out a little event, and one of the mediums gave me a reading, and Teresa of Avila showed up, and she's been such a big part of my life. And there is I'm not a reincarnation, but there is a definite soul similarity.
yeah,
And she was showing up. It was really something. It was really, really something. So I have a special love for her. Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So that's right. I forgot to mention that. That's brand new. I've just started that with a friend because we had an in-person workshop that was really wonderful and successful. And everyone there was like, "Can't we have a group where
Yeah.
once a month we learn and develop the skill?" So it's called the art of the quantum jump. The premise operates on this idea that you can't really have a soul desire that's not meant to be fulfilled.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I'm exploring it in two ways. There's a 20-minute talk that is some aspect of understanding it from a different lens. So uh I'll be taking the concept called quantum coherence and what science is showing us about that reality of this world. And now
Mm,
appropriate it and assuming it 100% applies. But there are aspects of it that are undeniably relevant to what we're talking about when we talk about doing quantum shift within our being. Then
okay.
for the time, we do a different practice each month. So I give you the experience of a method. Again, each time we do it, it's going to be a little different. A method that allows you to experience the embodiment of the fulfillment of something that you're not thinking is fulfilled right now. It's like you're feeling the desire and you feel a gap between you and its fulfillment.
Yes, yes.
And we're doing the practice of actually building a sensible experience of the ways it's actually fulfilled just in
Mm.
practice. So it's different.
Yes.
I do a different practice each time that's the exact same goal or focus so that you can try it and you can go, "Oh, that really works." But I'm gonna because I want people to practice on their own before they come
Yeah.
back and make progress or have questions. So that's it. Yeah, we just started it. We just had our first one last month and it went really well. And if you do join the group or sign up for just one, you don't need to join the group. You always get the recording too. So you can always, go back and just practice that recording on your own.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and the study group as well with Teresa Avila. That's a study group where you learn you study the texts and there's a group. Is that how that works?
That has morphed. I should look on my website to make sure that has morphed to a self-guided course,
Okay.
5 weeks with, I think, 2 hours a week of videos. It's very robust.
Yeah.
And what I do is I take both the life and the texts of Teresa of Avila and let you get real intimate with both of those, but then also intimate with you and your life with both of those. And
Mm,
it's really great because she's a remarkable human being and how audaciously she lived out her spirituality in her time.
yeah.
It was Inquisition. So
Yeah.
she was very bold, and there's a lot there for us to understand. For instance, like you'll learn about the culture she was in, and it's fun to learn that just
Mm,
intellectually. But part of the reason that I bring that in is to help us understand we are so enmeshed in our culture, and we need to understand that we have influences we don't even realize going on in our culture. And as we grow in being mystics, we're freer and freer of our culture, but never totally free.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important to understand the day and the time. It gives you an insight into the language and the framework, and then it enables you to then pull out of it the universal part. I think when you can understand the part of it that's, conditional to the time and place and the culture, then it's easier to see the part that's just,
Yes.
eternal and universal. Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm really interested in that one. I might be
Oh,
doing it, the
great. You
self-study.
tried to do it.
Well, I just thank you so much. I feel like we've just gotten started and I'd love to have you back on to deep dive, especially into this. The feminine spiritual leadership, that part, I'm really curious to understand it better, even just my own thoughts around it feel so like inchoate and messy. And I'd love to have a deeper conversation. So I'd love to have you back. But thank you so much, Kimberly, for your time and your presence and for the work you do in the world, the light that you are in the world. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been so delightful to get to know you. I just, your the wisdom that you embody, the thoughts that you have, the experience, your tenderness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And everyone, that all of the links to Kimberly's books and everything we've spoken about will all be in the show notes. So please check out her website, check out her books, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.